Hi, Colt. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for taking the time to chat. It's great to talk with Java folks all the time.
I think the first time at the show, I have a father and son. So, but even more interesting, what is your first computer? Now I'm really curious.
What was my first computer? So the first computer I used was actually a Sun workstation.
This
Uh,
this is this is the best answer. If something, this is what I say. Hopefully, you will not say Microsoft Windows, right? So,
no, I've never used Windows for more than 30 seconds. I was a little kid, and it was great because the data was stored in Sun's data centers, so I could start playing computer games downstairs, and then log out when my dad went down, and then go back upstairs to a different one and resume playing, so he couldn't see me playing
ah,
computer games and get in trouble. It was fantastic, and that kind of actually taught me a little bit like, oh, the data's actually not living on the computer; it lives somewhere else. Where is that somewhere else? And it got me thinking a little bit about the network is the computer. Back when I was a little
this is
kid.
what your dad talk all time about, right? Network is the computer. So, and you just use that, right?
Exactly. Yes. I'm not going to go into too many Sun stories, but Sun was very close to, becoming the first cloud company. But my dad decided to be a dad, and I'm, eternally grateful for that. He was the best father anyone could ever ask for. So, when I was, I think 4, he stepped down as CEO. And went to all of my hockey games, all of my hockey tournaments, all of my golf tournaments, which is impressive given that there's 4 of us that he had to run around chasing.
And your father mentioned this, even the Java One's keynotes, I remember. He was a huge, hockey fan. And for me, it was strange. It's like, okay, we are in California and there's ice hockey. It's like, strange. But yeah, it is like it is.
Yes, San Jose is a hockey town, believe it or not. Like there was a 10-year sellout streak at the Shark Tank. They're not doing as well now, but they sold out for 10 years in a row.
Wow.
There's all sorts of junior programs and such. And now Macklin Scalabrini is the Sharks' new, I think he's like a candidate for Rookie of the Year in the league. And he played Junior Sharks at some point as a kid, which is the organization we grew up playing in. So he is actually a homegrown Shark. Yeah, California actually does have a lot of good hockey, and so does Las Vegas, where I currently live right now.
Ah, okay. By the way, your video is gone. It's not a problem because I just pushed the audio, but I cannot see you. So this is
I did that to save bandwidth because
you are in US, so there's no bandwidth.
my laptop was about to explode from heat, so I decided to
Okay.
turn it off.
So it's your still Sun laptop, right? No.
No, it's on laptop now. I use I'm kind of an open source junkie, so I use System 76.
Wow, this is actually a known one. So this is like a Linux company, right? So they have the laptops and servers, everything is on Linux.
Yes, it's basically the operating system I use is a fork of Ubuntu, and it's got a bunch of custom drivers that are custom written for the System 76 hardware. And then there's a couple UI changes and such. I actually like the Ubuntu UI better, but I really enjoy all the drivers just working. And it's the same experience you get on Mac, where all the drivers just work, except it's Ubuntu, which makes it way better because it's open source, like LittleHorse is, like Java is, and it just works out of the box. You don't get random like driver crashes and freezes and stuff. I forgot to turn off my Kind cluster, which is running like Kafka and 3 LittleHorse clusters and a couple databases and Keycloak on my laptop. So that's why it was making so much noise.
Ah, okay.
I was doing some development this morning and forgot to turn it off.
Yeah, very good. So, what I'm curious, because you said you played games on Sun. What kind of games were there?
It's so long ago. I think it was online games
Okay.
Online games on I don't remember where it was, but it was so long ago. I don't really remember it. But yeah, I did actually make use of I think it was LibreOffice it was OpenOffice back in the day to write my first couple papers because we didn't get laptops in school until 6th grade, but a couple times before that we had the option to type up our papers, and typing was way faster than writing. So I did get to use I did make use of the remote storage and being able to work in different rooms and such, depending on where my brothers were making the most noise on the Sun laptop. So yeah, like that's where I got introduced to concepts of the cloud.
And what is you started programming right away. So what is your journey, to programming?
I actually did not. I I,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I started programming in as a freshman in college. Sorry, no, a freshman in high school
Mm-hmm.
when I tore the labrum in my left hip, and I had to go a year with no hockey, golf, or taekwondo. So I'm like, well, what do I do? Then I learned how to write code, and I learned how to play piano. With
Okay. And
yeah.
and which programming language you started with?
Well, I took a single semester course in college.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, in high school. That was Java. I did APCS in Java. So naturally, I started in Java, but then all of the other courses I took in high school were like C, Fortran, COBOL, assembly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, dealing with like building a computer from scratch on a breadboard with NAND gates and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Really, really low level stuff. And then in college, it was C++ and Python because
Mm-hmm.
I studied AI in college. And then my first job was C++ and Python. So
Mm-hmm.
I had basically just 6 months of very, very rudimentary Java
Mm-hmm.
at age 14 and forgot all of it by the time I started LittleHorse. So when I started LittleHorse, I kind of had to relearn
Mm-hmm.
learn the new language and go back to it. And I've come to just appreciate how well thought out everything is, especially comparing it to other languages I've been using recently.
Mm-hmm. And okay, so you program a lot so you started a little bit in Java, then you did C and C++ and in Python. And which what was what you wrote software? I mean, you had some just for fun, or you had some projects, or what's
What did
what
I
is your
write?
background in programming?
Well, I think I started out just doing random stuff. I did some of the Stanford courses online in high school. Just like they post all the assignments. I did some of the assignments. So I built Solitaire. I built the classic brick breaking game,
Mm-hmm.
and that was just kind of for fun. I didn't really build anything substantial until
Mm-hmm.
I got my first job. Actually,
Mm-hmm.
I just was doing small little things here and there as an academic exercise. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have a cool hacker story where I wanted to break into the Xbox and get access to the games without paying for them or something like. I didn't do anything like that. So I was a very academic programmer earlier on in my career.
Me neither. I also did, boring enterprise stuff usually. So there was no. I just, enjoyed programming a bit, but yeah. Uh-huh.
Mhm.
And and um and what was your first job?
First job, I worked as a software engineer at a real estate company. I was there for like 3.5, almost 4 years,
Mm-hmm.
doing classic software engineer things, like microservices, integrations, um, building internal tools, building stuff that customers interact with, and it was all running in AWS on EKS and
Mm-hmm.
Kubernetes. So I was born into the Kubernetes world, um, and we use Kafka, of course. So all of these things I just kind of grew up with, and when people say, yeah, like SSH into a server, I look at them like, SSH into a server? Why would you do that? So I'm very very new in the software world, and I'm doing my best to catch up on all of the old stuff. Like at LittleHorse, we're dealing with a company that runs mostly on TPF mainframes, which is kind of crazy to me. But I'm rapidly getting up to speed on the older architectures.
And what's the Java?
No, actually, I didn't use any Java until LittleHorse. I I did Python and C++. I actually forked Istio and Envoy. Istio was
Wow.
in. I did all sorts of stuff at that job, including working on the infrastructure team, and we forked Istio and Envoy. Istio was written in Go, at least the controller part of it. I didn't do too much there. Um, this is probably a Java community listening to this, so I can say I do not like Go, and I love Java. Everything I dislike about Go, Java gets right. And then it was also Python. A lot of Python I did, and then Envoy itself was C++. So that was the C++ component.
Mm-hmm. This is actually interesting your perspective because so for me I just did Java all the time actually. So since JDK 1.0 to now,
Mm-hmm.
and I started with C++, and then JDK 1.0 came, and I really like C++, but no, but all my commercial work was Java. And Java is actually, if you have a background with C++ and Python, what you noticed how easy Java, you can install Java. So it's like single command you have Java, right? So there is and if the machine is fresh, you are basically done. And recently, maybe 2 years ago, I had to install Python, but I have a Mac, and I have to install Python 3, and this was unbelievable mess. I think I spent 3 hours, trying to see why it doesn't work. And with Java, it would take like 10 seconds, the same procedure, right? And the only problem I see with Java is that lots of projects are just overcomplicated because of the architects. But you can build actually very simple and maintainable systems with plain Java basically, and they are easy to understand, and therefore they are also easy to maintain. So and you also mentioned Kubernetes. So my opinion about Kubernetes a bit is also too much YAML, right? So this is like if you and Kubernetes is complex if you consider not all projects, especially on AWS. You could use, for instance, ECS. I don't know whether you're aware of ECS, is the Fargate. Yeah, for instance, a lot simpler than Kubernetes, right? And it is harder to build products, but for projects, ECS is way simpler, or AWS Lambda or stuff like that. And Java plays perfectly well there. And that's interesting. So and you got the idea for LittleHorse in EOC and C++ and Go time, right?
Uh, it was more in the time I spent building applications that were inside the infrastructure we were building. So the original one was that company was kind of trying to digitize the entire process of buying a house, and there's a lot of uh, very, very fast workflows that you have to do, like ad bidding. And then there's also some more departmental workflows you have to do, like scheduling home inspections, showings, open houses, and such. And even the ad bidding one, in all of them, you just have this big giant mess where there's calls to other microservices, stuff getting thrown on message queues in a kind of fire and forget, and then hope that someone picks it up and does something with it manner. There's calls to external APIs, and things go down, things break, people break their APIs, and that causes failures in other places. And when customers were calling and saying, hey, like, what's the status of the showing? And then we've dropped it. We spent hours and hours digging through logs trying to figure out what exactly happened. So what motivated LittleHorse was, hey, this is just a mess. It's really, really hard to build enterprise software in the modern day because everything has just become distributed, and distributed systems are hard by their nature. That's why Kubernetes has a reputation for being complex, is because it's a distributed system. That was the motivation. Is I wanted to create kind of a layer that makes it as easy to program in this distributed environment as it is to program on a JVM. Because writing stuff on a JVM and running it in one place is beautifully easy. You have the JMX console to tell you exactly where any thread is. You can inspect the thread stack of any thread, see if it's stuck. You can print out logs. You can have a debugger attached. And method calls are very reliable because they run in the same process. But once you get distributed across the network, you don't know what's happening when you make the network call. You don't know if it's going to come back. You don't know what other dependencies are called by that thing you're calling. So what I wanted to do, and what we're doing with LittleHorse, is creating kind of a digital operating system that can be distributed, a distributed OS that allows you to write processes that run across all of these various systems.
Mm-hmm. Into Java.
Into Java. So the core runtime framework, the open source LittleHorse kernel, is all Java. And we have bindings to allow you to build these processes, what we call a WIF spec, WF spec. Those can be generated from our bindings in Java, Python, Golang, and .NET. With apologies to my father about .NET.
No, we can cut it out. So it's not a problem.
We'll cut that part out.
Yeah. Your dad knows about that, of course, right? No.
He knows about it. But
okay, cool. Yeah, he's cool about it.
I mean, there's a lot of people that are that have code in .NET and they're like, this is legacy code. We don't want to rewrite it. We need to interface with it. So what we do is we turn it into a task. or now it becomes something that you can use almost like an RPC inside a LittleHorse workflow or LittleHorse process. And the process can be written and defined in Java, and it can use new modern things written in Java or Go or something. And it can also call out seamlessly to the .NET stuff. So you can build processes spanning across your legacy .NET and now your new Java and Python stuff all at once.
Are you using lots of dependencies in the core LittleHorse engine?
It's a JVM app, and the only thing it really depends on is Kafka. And we don't use Kafka in the sense that you might use it. Kafka isn't our task queue. Kafka is our commit log. We built a distributed database for reasons of performance. We can get really, really good performance per core on LittleHorse, and the way we do that is we built our own database that's custom for this type of orchestration that we're doing. And every database needs a commit log, and we stole Kafka as a commit log, and we used Roxuby as the indexing layer, and we've got all sorts of logic around that. So the only dependency that the core kernel server has, like we used to call it the LittleHorse server, but the only dependency that LittleHorse kernel has is Apache Kafka. And then the clients are a very, very, very thin thing you can download from Gradle. Like a very, very thin, very easy to install into your existing project. We've got our SDKs in Java, Python, Go, and .NET. And to your point earlier, the one that has the least trouble with people getting installed is always Java. Java is always the easiest one for people to install.
Yep. And what I really appreciate is because also my philosophy in enterprise systems, I don't like external dependencies because you have to care about them. You have to update them, and you have to understand it, and they never come for free. So I also try to avoid all the external dependencies. And what's also I appreciate is that you're using Kafka more or less as a database, right? Because in my world, Kafka is enterprise projects. So Kafka is still cool, and people like to use it without knowing for what. And Kafka is often misused as a messaging solution, and this doesn't work that well because Kafka has durable topics, and if you just use Kafka to send byte arrays back and forth, you could use other technologies than Kafka. But in your particular case, to using Kafka as a store is actually a really good idea.
Yeah, it's worked great for us. Sometimes we end up having to support Kafka for our customers. We're also partners with Confluent, and we are in other cases trying to use other people's Confluent clusters as our backing. I got a lot of friends there, especially on the Kafka Streams team, the open source Kafka Streams team. So we're not opinionated about where you get your Kafka from. We can support it for customers because, as you say, it is an enterprise project. But it's interesting you mentioned messaging. There was an improvement to Kafka release just in the 4.0 release, KIP 932, which adds queue semantics to LittleHorse. So not LittleHorse, adds queue semantics to Kafka, my bad. Where in traditional Kafka, there is no ability to acknowledge an individual message. So you have a consumer offset which says, I have read up to message number 1002 in this partition. And you can't say that I have acknowledged message 1005, but not message 1004. KIP 932 now allows for individual message acknowledgement and also individual message retries, which is very, very cool. So then it is moving towards more of a messaging solution, and it's part of our platform. It's very important. Love to see all of the fantastic open source momentum in Kafka, and recently we've seen quite a bit of uptick in GitHub stars on LittleHorse after we moved to a fully open source license. So we're very excited about that too.
And I think you're also excited about 4 because they get rid of Zookeeper, which also simplifies installation of LittleHorse, right?
Yes, it is great. You can run Java in one JVM, and I'm doing a personal hack project on the side right now where I want to run Java and LittleHorse all in the same JVM, and it should be pretty easy to do. Where it shouldn't take me too long. I'm going to try to do it this weekend, where it'll be very, very simple to get LittleHorse and Kafka up together at the same time.
So I took a look at LittleHorse, and for me, it looks like a durable workflow engine, which does for me, all the heavy lifting like retries and idempotency. Is it right?
That is Correct for part of the platform that we have. For the open source LittleHorse kernel, that is what it does. It allows you to define processes with tasks and orchestrate the work across the tasks, the task workers, which from the open source LittleHorse kernel perspective are processes external to LittleHorse that are connecting to it and saying, hey, I'm ready to do this task, let me know when. And then, as you mentioned, the LittleHorse kernel manages observability, retries, idempotence, timeouts, and durability across those processes, and it gives you a code-first way to orchestrate it. So that's exactly correct. But as a company, we've got a lot of other products built around it. We've got we're working on a library of connectors. We have the framework built out, connectors that are going to be a cluster of workers that are drop-in plugins, with common tasks, like use the Twilio API to send an email, or update a lead in Salesforce will be common tasks. Those are probably going to be the first ones that make it into the marketplace. Though you can do some things in a no-code manner, and then write your own tasks in a very pro-code manner that work alongside them within the same workflow. We've got a couple streaming solutions and such coming out soon. We've got identity solution already, User Task Bridge, that connects your identity provider to LittleHorse, so you can easily, from within a LittleHorse workflow from the LittleHorse kernel, assign tasks to a human user. So we're building out a whole platform around it that will take it from more than just a durable workflow engine. But the LittleHorse kernel is the core of what we do, because you need somewhere to orchestrate the processes, and we're just coming up with ways to make it easier to define these processes and easier to implement the code for.
It's actually a good business idea, because you can keep, the LittleHorse server or kernel open source, and the business value happens, in the plugins and the connectors around it, right?
Yeah, we had the MongoDB license, which isn't fully open source until like a month ago, and that just didn't sit right with me. So we made it fully open, and we've got a very clean division between who's an open source engineer and who's not. And there's a lot of times the platform team will ask for features, and the open source team will be like, "Oh, we got a user using the open source thing who wants it to work a different way." And then we're very, very community focused on it. All of our roadmap and stuff is open source. All of our issues are open on the GitHub repo, and we've just started moving we've moved our architecture decision process from Confluence to GitHub to make it more observable as well.
And it's even better for design, I guess, because the open source core team, they care about the API of the engine, of the kernel, what it said. And the commercial developers are just users of the API, right? So usually there are no hidden APIs. Everything is clean. So okay, this is public API. Everyone calls the same APIs, and then the design is cleaner for everyone, right?
Exactly. That's exactly right. It's a great, very, very clear open source API that we've got people using open source LittleHorse in right now without we didn't even know that they were using it. They're just using our docs and like, hey, by the way, can you support the open source project? We don't want to use your product. And like, okay, yeah, we can do that. We can help with support, because it's a distributed system, and a lot of enterprises have rules like you can't run open source without paying someone for support.
Yeah.
It was a nice surprise. Good to see that coming along.
What are you aware of the product called Glassfish?
Glassfish, I'm not.
Not. You should. So don't tell it your father. This was from Sun Microsystems. It was the enterprise server. It was called Glassfish by Sun, and the genius was it was open source, of course, and it was the reference implementation for Java EE or J2E back then. And now it comes. You could also buy support for it. And this is where I was able to introduce Glassfish in lots of companies, because the great story was they could start with open source. If they needed support, they could buy support from Sun Microsystems back then, and later Oracle. And but it was still, just an implementation of the standard. So there was no dependency on the product Glassfish itself, which was really genius. Right, so take a look at Glassfish, or ask your father about Glassfish. It was a really interesting idea, and I was really surprised that it not. Also, in Europe, in Germany, it really took off. There were lots of Glassfish projects just because of the idea that you can download the open source solution, get support for it, and the spec was independent from Glassfish. So there was the Glassfish, the reference implementation of the specification.
That's a good way to do it. I mean, it's also similar to the Red Hat model, where Red Hat has an enterprise fork of.
Yeah, but the difference was that the J2E was a part of the JCP Java community process, and there were multiple products. It was like Glassfish was from Sun, then JBoss was from Red Hat, WebLogic was from BA or later Oracle. So there are multiple products all implementing the same spec, and Glassfish was the reference implementation of the spec. And this was and you could also buy support for it. This was actually the interesting part. So because if someone using our product from Sun, they were not depending on Sun because they can switch at any point of time also to Whitefly or whatever. But Whitefly and the others, they were just products. They were not the reference implementation of the Java standard. So this was a good product, still around, but I don't know, 10 years ago, it was used a lot actually in large companies. And right now the successor is called Payara. Right now it's still successful. They're actually hiring, and it's also a great company. It's called Payara. They just took the open source bits from Oracle and created an own product.
That's awesome. Love to see the Sun stuff still thriving and flourishing.
Yeah, it really is. So yeah. Okay, the LittleHorse reminds me a little bit of step functions. Are you actually familiar with step functions?
Yes, we are. I think the core kernel is the only part of our platform that you could really compare to step functions. Mm-hmm. It does a lot more. The core kernel does a lot more even than that. It's got human in loop interactions. I think that a little bit better. It's easier to work with, better observability. Step functions isn't exactly open source. I don't think anyone would say that.
No,
no, it's not. But we do solve similar problems to them at the LittleHorse kernel level. I think when you move on and zoom out and look at the overall platform, it does just so much more than.
No, I just wanted to compare the concepts because. Without step functions, if I just go, to plain AWS, because you said you have some experience with AWS. Mm-hmm. So what you will do is you will send events back and forth. And in one point of time, you will lose track what actually happens. It's really hard to debug. But with step functions, what you could do is, I think the major feature of step functions is there's a task. And you can call something, and step functions will wait until it arrives. And this already simplifies because you will usually need and producer and consumer on the other side, and at least two events. And with step function, it's just one call. And if this doesn't happen, it automatically retry, or you can set up a retry. And on error, another task can be executed. And another benefit of that is that the entire workflow is nicely documented because you see exactly what happens. And LittleHorse is the same, but is open source, so it is independent from AWS, but you get the same benefits. This is why I mentioned step functions, because it is, I would say, it simplifies a lot, because the alternative is use complete asynchronous workflow, completely relying on events, and the problem you get there is you will need either like command pattern event, right? Or multiple types of events, and you will lose track what actually happens, right? Because you will need that many events, and even, you get challenges, right? Challenges like, how many topics do you like to have? You have one topic with multiple events, one topic which represents the type of event, and the event is just the data. Lots of design decisions, and the complexity can become huge.
Yeah, it is true, using things like LittleHorse really, really reduces the complexity. And you can't necessarily completely get rid of Kafka just by using LittleHorse, right? You still, there's a difference between orchestration and choreography.
Mm-hmm.
Orchestration is do this series of tasks, and using Kafka for that is actually not very easy. Exactly the same exact problem that you were talking about, using messaging is very difficult for that. But then there's also events, which is like, hey, this process was done. We just had an order placed, right? And there could be an analytics service that wants to do that. There could be like a data lake that you need to throw that event into. There could be completely separate processes, like, loyalty programs or something that need to listen to those events. And that's different from orchestration, right? And that's why LittleHorse integrates so strongly with Kafka, because we need both, right? You need both. I love Confluent. Confluent does the choreography part, which is events, but it's very hard to orchestrate processes that way. So what you want to do is orchestrate processes with something like LittleHorse, and have that integrate with Kafka and give you a log of what's going on for analytics purposes and for triggering downstream reactions. And that's one of the things that we're working on with a couple of our early users right now, is designing some products around that to allow you to do things like, when this workflow completes, start this one. If this one fails 10 times, start that. Or turn this workflow into a database table in Snowflake, right? The workflow has a user ID variable, a list of item IDs, a total price, a status, and I'm describing an order workflow, right? And then that order workflow, those columns I talked about were basically the same columns you'd want in a SQL table. Sorry, those variables I talked about are the same columns you would want in a SQL table to do analytics on orders, right? So we're working on exporting those workflows into any database of any type that you want with some of our users right now. They're helping design that, and we're very excited. We're going to probably have some product launches around it later this year. And a lot of it will be in the open source as well. So very exciting place to be.
Yeah. And why the name LittleHorse?
Well, I've the public answer is it's fast and agile, and you put a saddle on top of it and you can ride and get from A to B very, very fast. And also my dad, well, this was after the fact, but my dad just bought a ranch, and he's got like 700 cows, and I'm trying to get him to buy a horse, but he hasn't bought one yet. He says that's too much work.
For one horse and 700 cows.
Yeah, I guess like they need different type of hay, and they need a different type of
meat, okay.
And they would need to build a different type of barn, because I think cows, you can just let them like roam around and eat the grass, and that's pretty easy. But I think horses are a little bit more work. At least that's what I've heard. Hopefully, though, running LittleHorse is a little bit less work. That's why we have LittleHorse Cloud. Okay,
I would suspect, a little cow or something, but LittleHorse sounds better. Or Mustang.
Yes. And a nice accident is that I didn't really know that LittleHorse is going to be competing with MuleSoft, and it turns out that we are. We're competing with MuleSoft quite a bit, and I think horses are faster than mules.
Of course.
Yeah, so that's actually pretty nice.
And even smarter bit, right? I would say.
I think so. I'd like to think that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Otherwise, we have to invite a MuleSoft, but I know there will be no little mule. Yeah. They don't have little mules, right? Just a MuleSoft.
Just MuleSoft, yeah.
Yeah. Then LittleHorse is faster, more agile, and hopefully smarter. So this is I'm not sure about, but yeah.
My dad made his career beating up on Microsoft, right? Another MSoft company, right? So I guess maybe we can.
Okay. That's actually cool.
It is cool. Yeah.
But Microsoft changed a bit, right? So right now with Visual Studio Code and with OpenJDK, they have their own build. So they and they had also lots of Sun people actually. So now it becomes almost an open source company right now.
They did, and I think Satya has done a beautiful job with Microsoft. And the Satya used to work for Sun, and he also used to work for Great Plains Software, which a family friend of ours was the founder of that, and so in my opinion, I think Sun has taken over Microsoft. So that's, but there's also a lot of Sun folks at Red Hat and a lot of Sun folks at Oracle. There's the Sun spirit is alive and well.
And I mean, what's your relation to Sun? I mean, how old were you if Sun was bought by Oracle?
I was 10.
Okay.
Yeah. So I remember I was excited because my dad got to spend more time golfing with us. So that was fun.
Okay, cool. So, but you like Sun? Are you neutral? I mean, 10 is maybe too young, right?
Well,
or
I wasn't using. I didn't. I couldn't tell you the difference between Spark and NFS, and the importance of how Sun made TCP/IP mainstream. I couldn't tell you about that when I was 10. Now, as I've gotten older, I said, "Goodness gracious! I wish I was. I wish I was able to appreciate this at the time I had it." But I still run into Sun. Like 2 years ago, I was working with a company that was running Kafka on Kubernetes on Solaris. Just like
Wow.
think about the timing of that, right?
Yeah.
Kubernetes came out, I think, 2015. So they probably installed Kubernetes like 2017, right? So here they are in 2017, and they got a bunch of Solaris computers. And like, I want to install a new cluster framework called Kubernetes on top of these things that are, from a company that is bought 7 years ago, right? And then they installed Kafka onto it, which is a stateful application in like probably 2019, because you can't possibly run a stateful workload on Kubernetes before then. So they made another decision to put more stuff onto the Solaris thing in 2019. So the Sun stuff just works. It's amazing. And I hear stories from engineers I talk to all the time. Like one of them says, the longest uptime I've ever had is a Solaris server, and it's been running, I think, for like 15 or 16 years, and it hasn't crashed or restarted once. And there was a DevOps project I did as a contractor ages ago or something like that. Like,
But this is more than that. So I can tell you from Europe or where. So my background, what I did, it was maybe 1999 to 2007 or later. I performed also some workshops for Sun Microsystems for Europe mostly, and had there were lots of students, and there was excitement around Sun, without going deeper into the technologies, just because of the design, the mindset, and I don't know what it was. Everyone liked Sun, and the design of the hardware was great. Then Java came out, and even design of Java with the Duke, with the coffee, and it was the first. I don't know whether the first, but the first language with colorful design and with the Duke, and the others just Python or C. This was like a boring website back then. So I would say Sun did a lot of stuff right, and I never heard something negative about Sun, except in Europe that they don't make a lot of money because they are too most like a hippie company almost. They just wanted to be good open source citizen. And this was the only criticism I heard. Like from the business perspective, it could be better than it was. But from developers, everyone loves Sun. This is what I'm asking you, because you grew up with Sun without knowing it, right? And from whatever I look at, I mean, there are lots of geniuses, right? I don't know whether you know Bill Joy. Heard about him, for instance? Yeah.
I think I met him when I was a kid, but I haven't. I really look up to him. He's amazing.
Yeah. There were lots of people who just were fascinated by Sun and contribute lots of stuff. So this is why I'm asking you, because you have complete different perspective from inside and from outside, right?
I do, and I laugh when you call Sun a hippie company, because I would never call my dad a hippie.
Your dad, no, but it's just more like observation. If you take a look on AWS or Amazon or Oracle, they're more like almost military company, right? They are very how to call it, thinking numbers. So very, very rational decision and logic, and maybe too, I would say, too dry. And Sun was more about division and more about longer term and open source, and this was always lots of projects, open source project, lots of attempts until something took off. This was my impression from outside. And the other companies were a little bit boring because they were too rational,
I have a take on this. I think my dad would say they believed in kick butt, have fun, and then he also likes to talk about the labs, Sun Labs, where the rules were, I think there's like 1,000 people in it or something, in teams of 4, and you'd get in there and you'd have like a year to come up with a project, and then if you would present the project in the the semi-annual labs presentation, and some line of business wanted to take it, then you'd go turn your project into a product, and then you come back to the labs. Or if no one wanted it after 2 years, then you cancel it and start a new one, right? And that allows for very talented people to start innovation. My take on it is, IBM, Oracle, those companies you mentioned, to a lesser extent, Amazon. There's a saying: nobody ever got fired for choosing IBM. I think they're so reliant on processes and protocols that you can't innovate. At LittleHorse, we have almost no processes, almost no protocols, and the reason why we get away with that is because we've got an entrepreneurial spirit, and I've got an incredibly talented team who I can trust to just make things up and come up with creative solutions to problems. If you're looking for a solution in a textbook, or if you're looking at a solution in history books, you're not going to be solving anything. You'll be repeating something that's a commodity already. And, I think IBM is a fantastic company, but a lot of the IBM culture is very, very conservative and very, very much, let's not get fired, versus if you look at, for a while, Google was, I guess, hippie, if you want to bring that word back. I think a lot of that was due to Eric Schmidt's influence when Eric came from Sun to Google in the earlier days. There was a lot of innovation spirit there, a lot of projects, and individual contributors had a lot of ability and leeway to shape the roadmap. And that works when you have a good culture, you have good management, and more importantly, you've got good people who really know what they're doing and care about the mission. So that's what we got at LittleHorse. I think that's what Sun had. And it's really hard to do when you've got a massive behemoth company that's been around for a century.
IBM was back then was not my impression, because IBM, they had the developer works, and they were like small, similar to Sun Labs, and but right now Red Hat is maybe a little bit hippier, right? So it was bought by IBM, but there are lots of interesting projects. Are you aware of Quarkus, for instance?
Oh, very aware of Quarkus. Yeah, we just decided to use it at LittleHorse last week.
This is actually a very good decision, because the Quarkus is actually the successor of Whitefly, which we mentioned earlier, which implemented the Java E specs, which are actually used a lot in larger companies. And the cool story about Quarkus is what Quarkus did. This was a really interesting strategic move. They try to optimize as much as possible at build time, and not at runtime. So they read the annotations and the parameter descriptors, and they generate highly efficient bytecode. So the application starts faster, and they have also very good Kafka integration, for instance. It's actually a genius decision to use Quarkus. I use Quarkus all the time for all my projects right now.
Yeah, we believe it or not, we actually don't use currently in our entire platform. We don't use SQL, and we don't have any. Well, we do now, but we have a couple. But we very recently only introduced our first couple of REST APIs. Everything was the LittleHorse kernel, which is gRPC based and Kafka based. So very, very unique stack in LittleHorse.
Yeah, but it's okay. I mean, why? Yeah.
It's totally fine. But now with some of the ecosystem products we're building around the open source kernel, a lot of them are going to be more, front ends or back-end server applications that serve up a front end or stuff like that. And those have to be RESTful in some regard. And that's why we're bringing in Quarkus right now. But very lightweight in terms of use of frameworks. We've got a culture that does not like automatic dependency injection and inversion of control. And we don't like heavy dependencies, and we love the fact that Quarkus does most of the work at build time, not compile time.
Very good.
Sorry, build time, not runtime.
Yeah. And how depending are you on Kafka?
I'm of the opinion that the Kafka API is it's going to be an industry standard, just like the Postgres API, right? Just like SQL, right? And also, there's a lot of people who say, yes, that's true, but the open source Kafka is not going to stick around. I think that's false as well, because the criticism was, well, Kafka doesn't have queues. Well, now open source Kafka has queues. Open source Kafka is too expensive because of cross AZ replication. Well, KIP 1150 came out recently, and it proposes to allow Kafka to write directly to S3 and avoid all cross AZ costs. So every criticism of Kafka is getting innovated away by the open source community. So,
are you also aware of Red Panda?
We are. We are aware of them. And I don't want to say too much on the record about them, but
Okay.
I let's just say I feel very, very confident in our decision to stay with open source Apache Kafka.
Yeah. Why I'm asking you about that? Because the step functions, they are just too expensive for if you have lots of workflows. This can get very expensive. There's an express solution of step functions.
Yeah.
And what I thought is you could use actually LittleHorse and then plug Node Kafka, because Kafka on AWS is also too expensive. So from my perspective, so if you have the serverless, you have to pay per partition, which can be expensive. And if you use the more traditional one for 4 brokers, you're paying at least, I would say, 500, 600 euros or dollars per month for 3 Raspberry Pis basically. So it would be interesting to run LittleHorse on AWS and plug in directly, let's say S3, so that you can say you could run then LittleHorse, I guess, as an AWS Lambda. And then the entire cost model, it will be really cheap because you will pay invocation, and you would call the S3 API, but there will be no moving parts.
I get where you're going. You're going from like a serverless LittleHorse, which is like
exactly.
Right? We are going at that from a different route. I think that what you describe is architecturally possible. It's just going to be a lot of work. Like we have to wait for KIP 1150 to come out, and then we probably have to use something like SlateDB instead of RocksDB on the server side. It'd be tricky, but we can do it. I think the more immediate way we're going to do it is LittleHorse itself is multi-tenant. And we're working on a multi-tenant serverless cloud offering where you pay per task, right?
Exactly.
Right. And then for very small workloads, it'd be pretty economical. And then you could just have like on our perspective, we could have 200 or more tenants on each LittleHorse cluster, and provide guaranteed quality of service through quotas and isolation and such. And then the users would be able to pay on a per usage basis rather than paying for a cluster. So that's how we are going to solve that problem immediately. But in the long term, the architecture you describe is possible.
Yeah, it will be also interesting because what I also try to do in more critical projects, to have a multi-account strategy where the tenant is basically gets an AWS account, right? And then we can run completely isolated workflow in this account. And but I just thought,
we do have that as well. We call that BYOC, bring your own cloud.
Cool.
That's another flavor of the LittleHorse cloud offering that we have. So we can do that as well.
So you actually are pretty far. When you started with LittleHorse?
It's embarrassing to admit, but it was almost 3.5 years ago. And it's embarrassing because I'm about as far, we are about as far along as I thought we would be after like a year and a half, and it's 3.5 years. So we're a pretty mature company. We've got like 16 people now. We've got some open source users, some commercial users, a lot of projects, and our website needs serious work, but we're in a good spot.
Yeah, I was not aware of that until Java 1 said, that's interesting. This sounds like Sun Microsystems, pure Java. That's really incredible, interesting. And there a little bit more marketing in the Java community. You should go to conferences as well. The DevOps is a huge one and stuff like that, and promote it a bit.
I agree. We do need to start going to some conferences. I think that's on my to-do list. I've spoken a couple times at the Confluent conferences. I spoke once at Confluent and once at Strimsy. Both of those were about Kafka, not about LittleHorse. So we need to fix that.
You know Devox?
Yes, that's in London, no?
Devox, the origin one is in Belgium. It's the largest. So this is like, I would say, more than 4,000 Java developers. So it is immediately sold out. So it's like they set it out in a few seconds. And it was Java Polis at the beginning was the name of the conference. And then it became Devox. And from there, it spread out worldwide. And so the in Antwerpen is the origin one in Belgium. And this would be so regarding LittleHorse. how recent is the Java of LittleHorse? So are you using Java 21, 24, or what's the story?
We we're on our server's on the latest LTS version. I considered bumping up to 24, and then we realized, oh yeah, no, 25 is coming out in 6 months. Might as well just wait. We're very the one where we're very cutting edge is Kafka. Like we are constantly soak testing and we contribute a lot of bug fixes back to Kafka. So that one we're very, very up to date. But Java just works, right? Java is so reliable, and 21 is great. The generational CGC has really helped LittleHorse in many ways, and virtual threads were huge. We're going to write a blog post about virtual threads. Those two things in 21 were fantastically important improvement for us, but we're not on. Like we've tested it with 24. The clients work with 24, so you can use Java 24 and have clients that talk to the LittleHorse server. But we'll update the server when 25 comes out.
Same here. I'm just using Java 21 everywhere and waiting for the next LTS because exactly same. There's actually no such thing like LTS because it really depends on the JDK provider. But the truth is, all large companies are still believing in LTS, so there is LTS out there, right? So exactly. So
it's also like a non-embarrassing way to not have to upgrade every 6 months.
Exactly. Yeah. And are you using already Java records and virtual threads, everything inside LittleHorse, or is your code base fresh? Or
well, in the core kernel, in the open source code, we've got an open PR right now, which is a massive refactor to change our gRPC server, how we handle requests, to use the thread per request pattern, which was not really possible before virtual threads, or at least not easily. And we've seen massive improvements in performance because of that. So that PR is open. It's going to be merged pretty soon. We are using records. I think a lot of our demos use records because they're like, Spring Boot apps that do something. I don't think we have records inside the LittleHorse kernel. We do have them in some of our other products that are more REST APIs, traditional stuff built around LittleHorse kernel, but not on the kernel itself.
Because I constantly refactoring my code bases. I'm usually working for larger enterprise project for my clients, and it is amazing how much code you can delete just using the recent features of Java. For instance, even the multi-line strings. The code blocks you can use for test purposes, to have an easy JSON generation and stuff like that. So it is lots of great stuff coming, with Java.
Yes, it's wonderful. We are trying to support. Well, not trying to. We do support Java 11 and later for our clients. The server itself is only 21 because we imagine most people will run it using the Docker container or our cloud services, so they probably won't have to install it on a Java 11 JVM.
How fast is LittleHorse? So I mean, what we can expect, or what is a typical performance requirements on the server?
So one metric is time from one task being completed to the next task being started in a workflow with multiple steps, and that's depending on how you tune it from 12 to 40 milliseconds. And we try to make sure that it's under 50 tail latencies, or tail latencies say below 100 and then P95 below 50 for our soak tests. And then the other one we can do is how many tasks per second per core, and it really depends on a lot of things because it depends.
Yeah,
but we can get a couple hundred tasks per second per core, which is a lot better than other workflow engines can. And the reason for that is because we built our own distributed database that was optimized for this type of orchestration rather than just pulling out SQL and using Postgres or Cassandra or something.
So we are talking here about distributed database persistence, right? So yeah, exactly, because it's not like we are on the data is persisted. How often is it replicated or?
Yeah, it's synchronously replicated, and the way it kind of works is writes go through Kafka. And are processed by a stream processor very, very quickly. And we've really, really tuned that process to make the latencies incredibly low. And they're written into RocksDB. So the change log is also replicated as well. So If you're a Kafka junkie, Kafka streams is how we do it. But also, we've done some dark magic, and you can, a lot of the times when you do that pattern, you don't get read your own writes. But we have done some dark magic and communication between the servers and gossip protocols and stuff like that. So we do get read your own writes. So when you, which is really, really nice, because then you can get ordered, serialization and really nice guarantees about data consistency models.
Okay, sounds really interesting. And you also said Kafka streams. This is also what is not used too often in practice, which is a pity, because what Kafka streams are is this, you can join, basically, right? You can join streams, and you can how to call it? You can compose lower level topics to higher level topics with, or lower level events to higher level events, and you get a kind of join in SQL with a push semantics, which means if an event arrives in a topic, then the result gets calculated, which is really interesting for notification stuff like that or whatever. So you can create a hierarchy of topics, and you get more meaningful events. And this is in lots of enterprise projects completely ignored. So they are really pushing byte arrays back and forth with Kafka. And which is a pity, because you have to do the work, right? You have to deserialize the byte array, what's inside. But with the Kafka streams, you get lots of semantics, like the sliding windows and tumbling windows and all the stuff is already built in, right?
That is true, and that's where Kafka streams actually is used a lot more than you might think. And there's a company called Responsive that's doing some great work on it. Also, I got a lot of friends at Confluent who are doing great work on it, but it's actually used in a lot of places, and for exactly what you're talking about. But under that is a distributed state management and task orchestration thing, which is how LittleHorse orchestrates its distributed database. Mm-hmm. We only use that part. We actually don't use sliding windows or aggregations or anything on top of it. We're building products that will use that, mm-hmm. that are going to be separate from the open source kernel. But the open source kernel literally just uses the fact that it allows you to write in sync to RocksDB and replicate that.
Cool.
Right.
So
we don't actually use those features, which is kind of wild.
So your LittleHorse behaves like a Kafka Streams app?
No, not quite. LittleHorse uses Kafka Streams to implement a distributed database.
Okay, so it's not okay. So this is even below that.
Yes. So Kafka Streams has layers. There's mm-hmm. the processor API, and there's mm-hmm. the domain-specific language, the DSL. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We use the processor API and Kafka and some very, very dark magic to create a distributed database that we use when processing workflows.
Okay.
And the fact that Kafka is there is actually hidden from all of our users. You can't actually see Kafka. In the current .13 release of LittleHorse, you cannot see Kafka. It's just hidden completely. But we have some future products coming out that will use Kafka streams to create insights based on your workflows. And they will use Kafka streams in the traditional manner, which is exactly what you described: windows, joins, aggregations, creating higher level events and views and tables based on your lower level events. And those lower level events are going to be coming from LittleHorse.
Mm-hmm. So I already know, the name for your next product should be Dark Horse.
Dark Horse. That's actually a good idea. We got one coming out that's called Saddle.
Okay. the Dark Horse because of dark magic, This is like,
Yes. Yeah. I like that. Dark Horse is a good one. I think Saddle is another one. And then I think I want to do something with the word full in it. Like foolproof, I don't know. Foolproof auth or something. I don't know.
I think there's one of the few companies, right? So which use really Sun Spirit a little bit inside, This is pretty cool.
Yes, it's been very, very fun.
Are you actually using Java modules inside?
Java modules. I embarrassingly don't know what that is. And yes, I did write a lot of the code. So
okay. JDK 9 Java modules. I'm not using Java modules either. JPMS, Java Platform Module System. Mm-hmm. But you don't need it if you have, I would say, a kernel app. Mm-hmm. You would like to use modules if you would like, to maybe put something like a plugin, something like this. This would be a good idea to use modules. And yeah, this is what modules are on compiler level, This is more like OSGI. But take a look. Maybe for some projects interesting. I'm not use modules in my enterprise projects at all. In your project, it could be interesting, but it doesn't have to. But it is built in Java since JDK 1.9. And just take a look at it. Maybe it's interesting. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. We'll take a look.
Yeah, thank you a lot. It was really a pleasure. And I had also chatted with your dad, but your dad is more maybe like a businessman, right? So less interested in the technology. And you are actually the opposite. And I'm really stunned how much you know about, all the distributed systems and stuff like that. This is great, actually.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I try to make my dad run sales for LittleHorse and business strategy and stuff. So I have him kind of working for free, probably 20 hours a week, which is the biggest cheat code for any startup ever. It's fantastic.
And have you the possibility to present LittleHorse to James Gosling?
Not yet, actually. That's a very good idea. We should probably go do that.
Yeah, I would do this immediately, just for fun, Show James this and say, what do you think about? And
I would love to do that. Thanks.
He's retired right now. He has lots of time, because he was in Amazon. But right now, he will maybe even help you, just for fun.
And I heard Amazon is a very busy place to work.
Yeah, but now he retired, so now he needs some horse management system. Perfect. Thank you. Where people can find LittleHorse, and maybe the last thing. What is the Hello World LittleHorse? So for Twitter, hello. So for CRUD right now would be Twitter. What is for Hello World for LittleHorse? It's more like sending an email and waiting for retrieval. What is the canonical use case for LittleHorse to start with?
Order management, but our quick start in our open source repository, which you can find on our website, littlehorse.io. There's a big giant button that says "Get Started," and it takes you to this quick start with video tutorials and stuff. Is a know your customer flow. So it's like, hey, customer runs the flow, and it will stimulate using a third party identity verification service, wait for an external event, come back in, and then either notify the customer that they are accepted or rejected. Right? It's a very, very simple flow that kind of shows, okay, you can do things fast, you can wait, you can have complex, branching logic and stuff like that. And this is how it goes. So that's the Hello World. You can find it on our website, and you can also find our GitHub on the website and take a look and comment on my PRs and leave us a star and stuff like that. So,
and how listeners can find you on LinkedIn, Twitter, or whatever you have, Blue Sky?
I have Twitter, and it's kind of a random stream of consciousness as my code's compiling, and I have LinkedIn as well, so you can find me there. And I'm trying to start writing more blogs again on littlehorse.io, our website. I've written a lot of blogs there in the past, but in 2025, I haven't written as many. So I'm going to try to get back to doing that.
Yeah, and if listener will try to find Colt McNeely, they will find you somewhere, right, in the internet.
Google thinks I'm a professional golfer, which is funny because I played it.
You are a professional golfer.
Google thinks I am.
Google thinks so. If you are a professional golfer on top of that, so you are an ice hockey player, professional golfer, CEO, CTO, and and Kafka expert.
My brother is a professional golfer. I once qualified for a professional tournament and then got nervous and got dead last. So because of that tournament, I have like an ESPN profile and because of that, Google thinks I'm a pro golfer, even though I'm I'm very, very not good. I got very lucky and got into a tournament by winning like a junior thing or something way back in the day. So if you Google me, it'll say pro golfer. If you Google my brother, he is a pro golfer.
Okay. Super cool. Thank you a lot. It was a pleasure to chat with you. Really.
It was a pleasure. Thank you, Adam.
Okay. Bye.